Hi, good evening. Welcome to Haz'el Inspirations. We are back with Mr. Ford, and we have a special guest this evening, DK. Today's episode, we're going to dive into the intricacies of law, justice, and civil rights. Today's episode is a deep dive into some critical legal concepts and recourses that can impact the lives of incarcerated individuals and their families. We're going to explore habeas corpus, void judgment petitions, grievances, and civil action complaints, with a particular focus on how these mechanisms can be used against officials from the Virginia Department of Corrections. So whether you're a legal enthusiast, a family member of an incarcerated person, or just curious about the legal system, we ask for you to stick around. We ask for you to share your input. And we also ask that you, if you need additional information, we ask that you contact us. Mr. Ford, I want to thank you for coming back. This is going to be a lengthy segment. And I know that there's a lot of areas that I myself do not understand. And DK is here with us. And he is an individual that has experienced some aspects of the legal system, and he probably may share some information with you, but coming from a younger standpoint to a seasoned person as yourself, everyone needs to understand what the legality of whatever state you're in, what the legal aspects are and what the ramifications are if you don't understand and you're trying to fight for your life to get out of the system. And I want to start by you sharing about your understanding about the habeas corpus, because that's an area that I think that all states have different policies and procedures of how they process. I know that habeas corpus is Latin for "you shall have the body," correct? It's a legal principle designed to protect individuals from unlawful detention. And I think it also ensures that a person can challenge the legality of their imprisonment before a court hearing. And I want you to kind of touch on that, how it works.
Well, okay, basically, after you're convicted, habeas corpus is done in what's called post-conviction. But there's also habeas corpus anytime when you're put in unconstitutional confinement or restraint. So you could file a habeas corpus for real from the back of a police car, let's say. Anytime that you are illegally restrained, detained, you're saying that your restraint is in violation of the Constitution or the law, then you can file a habeas corpus. So you can file a habeas corpus in the jail before you were convicted. If you say that they have no valid reason or legal reason to hold you and that your confinement is illegal, then you can file a habeas corpus. You could also file a habeas corpus. Most of habeas corpus is when you're in the Virginia Department of Corrections. It is after you were convicted. So that is most common in the VDOC. But habeas corpus can be filed at any time that you are being illegally detained by the government. So just to clarify that, it doesn't only relate to post-conviction. It relates to any time that you are being illegally detained. So the most common incidents that we will come into it in the prison is after you were convicted. So in Virginia, or there's two parts to this. One part is the state process and the other part is the federal process. So you have to keep that in mind when you're engaging in this. You have to do what's called exhaustion. So you have to exhaust your remedies in the state before you go to the federal court. So what you're doing is, now let's just say you were convicted and you have your appeal issues, your issues that were raised by your lawyer on appeal. So the issues that were raised by your lawyer on appeal had to have been raised earlier by your lawyer in the trial stage, in the preliminary stage, the trial stage, or post-conviction stage. And then you can raise those issues on direct appeal, which is to the Virginia Supreme Court. You have to file your notice of appeal in the trial court, and then that notifies the court clerk there to send your case to the Virginia Court of Appeals. And you have like basically a 3-level review. So you have your 1-judge panel that you send it to for your direct appeal. Then you have the appeal of the direct appeal if it's denied to a 3-judge panel in the Virginia Court of Appeals. And then if they deny it, you have to put in another petition for appeal basically to the Supreme Court of Virginia. So that's the last court. So those issues that are brought up on that appeal are issues that your lawyer brought up earlier.
And explain what exactly
now where habeas
judge
corpus
panel
comes in is if your lawyer did not bring issues up. So that's where you're dealing with ineffective assistance of counsel claims. So you're saying, well, this issue should have been brought up earlier. It should have been brought up preliminarily at trial. And sometimes you could say on appeal, say your lawyer did make, so sometimes what you have to do is you have to be kind of organized in this. And you have to look at which issues did you tell your lawyer existed that he should bring up at trial or preliminarily or on appeal.
Mr. Ford, I think DK had a question for you.
I wanted to know what the 3-judge panel was. Does that involve 3 separate judges?
Yeah, it's 3 judges. It's like a bench. 3 judges are on that bench. 3 judges are used to decide that case like a panel.
So you have to go
and they review.
No, you go ahead.
Say it again.
You go first.
They review what the 1-judge panel or review panel looked and decided on your case. So what you're doing at that stage is you are explaining to the 3-judge panel why the decision of the 1-judge panel was wrong. You're not bringing up new issues.
Yeah.
If you're bringing up new issues, it's because the lawyer failed to bring those issues up. So usually they will not allow you to bring up new issues on the appeal from the 1-judge panel because they will say it should have been brought up to the 1-judge panel. They're only looking at errors. So that's one thing, like many people have to kind of discipline their mind and understand that when you put in an appeal, it is not for every single thing that you think could exist on your case. It is only for the issues that were raised by your lawyer or you and decided negatively against you. So now you make a list basically of all of these issues, whether it was a suppression hearing. So say you had a identification case and it was, say, a robbery and there was a photographic lineup and you have an objection to the way that the lineup was conducted or its admission into the trial, and you wanted to have that precluded from being entered in. So say you filed a suppression hearing and wanted to say the lineup was impermissibly suggestive. That's what they said. So it's impermissibly suggestive if they put, you know, you only the one so-called African-American person and you got 4 other or 5 Caucasians in the picture. So obviously they're going to pick the one guy. Right. Or if you're a big guy and they got a bunch of skinny guys in there, or if they put their finger on the picture and they say, this is the guy, anything where it's impermissibly suggestive, or if it's an in-court identification, well, there's only one guy here. So say that that is one of the issues that you wanted your lawyer to raise, and say he did raise, you can raise that on appeal, so long as you follow through with the objections. So you have to make objections at each stage where you're supposed to make objections. You got to renew them and properly preserve your issues for appeal. So that's what they call it. They say you have to preserve these issues for appeal. So as long as they're properly preserved, meaning you raised it and you objected and you say, you know, I want to note this for the record that I'm going to appeal this issue, something to that effect. Then that is a properly preserved issue that now you can raise on appeal to the one judge panel. And then from that stage, you're raising everything that you raised to the one judge panel, to the 3-judge panel, and to the Supreme Court. So let's just say, for instance, if you're getting organized in your case, let's just say you have 3 issues that your lawyer objected to. He raised, objected, he preserved it, properly preserved it. Those 1, 2, 3 issues are the issues that can go to the appellate stage. Now, let's just say that your lawyer, he made 3 objections, but he only raised 2 on appeal. But you think he should have raised 3, the 3 objections or the 3 issues. Then what you would do is, after you go through the appellate process, if you lose the appellate process on issue 1 and 2, on your habeas corpus, you raise anything that was not raised. So let's just deal with the appeal part first. So if you're dealing with the appeal issue, if he raised issue 1 and 2, and you say 3 should have been raised, then if you lose on the appellate process, then you raise the 3rd issue on the habeas corpus. And then you say, with that issue, you say, now the court, under what they call this case called Slayton versus Peregrine, what they will say is that you cannot use, and this is all this stuff that I'm explaining is very important, because it is, if you don't comprehend it, it'll bite you in the butt later on. So you really got to understand it.
And that's where I want to actually, I'm gonna cut in right now. You said that it starts from the time that, you're taken into custody, but what happens, I think you and I discussed this before, what happens if you're in a county jail? You don't get to see the public defender, you don't get to see the lawyer for 3-4 weeks. We talked about that time frame to file, for filing, correct? And law libraries,
yes.
Libraries are not in certain institutions, correct?
That's right.
So explain the time.
So what you,
law library should be every institution, correct?
They should be, and it's actually the law that they are there in some capacity. It's not necessarily that you, and this is where you get into, like, the wording of a lot of things, the wording of law. So a lot of people, you got to be careful about taking generalized understanding of what should exist and the legal particularity and explanation of what must exist according to their law. Because you can go in and you can argue something and it could be wrong. And they could say, well, it's not that you should have a law library, it's that you should have adequate and meaningful access to legal materials and the courts. So that's a totally different thing than having a law library, just to make that clear. So, like, say if you went back to the judge and say you wrote a letter to the judge and he called you up and you said, what's your issue? You say, look, man, there's no law library in there. And if that's your whole argument, he could say they don't have to have a law library. They have an institutional attorney. They have a request form where you can request cases. Even though it's insufficient, they have something. So the basis of your argument and why the judge is listening to you, what you said was not the right thing, and he can dismiss your complaint, basically, about not having access to the law library, as that's not legally required. But if you tell him, I don't have adequate and meaningful access to legal materials in the courts, that's the claim that they have to actually respond to. And then you can say, okay, what do you have in the way of legal advice or material? You can say, I have a request form that I have to submit, and I don't know any of the case names. I need to look and use a computer and explain, and explain what more you need, even though they know what you need for real, because they're lawyers and they went to school for at least 8 years, plus continuing education that they have to engage in after that. So they know how involved the legal process is. And if you take a person from the street and put him in the jail, you know that he does not have adequate access to anything.
Right.
It doesn't matter. They know it, but they want you to explain. And they get away with the fact that if you don't know what to explain, they can deny it. And it all looks, on paper, it looks like everything was just, but it was unjust. The whole process was unjust.
Right.
But So just knowing that, you know what I'm saying, know that you're not dealing with, there's I don't want to be cynical, but there's no real justice in that. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm explaining is
Not
so
at
you can,
all.
get this part right and know what you're dealing with when you go in there, you know. So it's like somebody you getting going to a sword fight or something, and they throw your sword over the fence. Okay, well, you're gonna have to go over the fence and get that, but the other guy got his sword. So I'm just telling you how this fight's gonna go. You know what I'm saying? Now it's up to you to overcome those odds. If
Right.
you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get you.
So um, I'm giving you the game. So this is what you're up against. Now you can go in there. Some things you could do preemptively, like right now, what we're doing right now. You can go and set up the situation for yourself or for anybody else who might come into contact with that, or go as a citizen and go look at the law library and say this is not sufficient. You know, if you don't have people on the outside looking at that and you know that's what's going on in your local jail, then you need to be involved in that. So you can be like, before I get locked up and sent into this dungeon, you know what I'm saying, I'm going to go ahead and take the steps to make sure that if I do end up in here, it's right. Because I might end up in there.
Right.
And nobody's immune. So some people are immune, actually. We'll get to that. But
yeah.
So the issue is the law library is supposed to exist. It doesn't necessarily legally have to exist, but adequate access to legal material and the courts
You
have
know,
to
nowadays
exist.
they want you to use the kiosk for everything.
In some places, the kiosk is set up for that. So in the jail, the J player system, or the Securus J player, which is like almost looks like a tablet.
Yeah, that's
You can basically download. Yeah, you sync your player to the kiosk is what they call it, and then it downloads legal materials or a legal database kind of, so you can search through cases and search through policies and procedures and stuff. But in the DOC in Virginia, they don't have that set up. So that's one of the things that we're going to be working on, is making sure that that is set up so that everyone has access to the law at their bunks, so they can study it at will, because that's why you're in the jail. That is why you're in the DOC, because of the law, because of so-called crime, and because of the law's application to those facts. So to be in that place and not be have really full total access to that is nonsense. You know, that means you it's almost like you're taking hostage. If you take somebody and you take them from the street and you put them in a place where they can't defend themselves and you tie their hands around your back, that means you're taking hostages. You're not punishing people for crime. You know, you're taking hostages. So you have to have access to the law. So when you're in the jail, let me go back to the appellate process thing real quick. You don't have a lot of access until you most likely get down the road, until you get down into DOC. And even there, it depends on where you go. Every prison is not going to have a great law library. In fact, most of them don't. It's really up to the brothers that's in there that fight for the law library, and working with the administration and filing lawsuits and writing letters and all this kind of stuff, that when you go to a law library and it's on point, thank the brothers that work there, because they're keeping it open. And, you know, the staff, sometimes they might support it and sometimes they see it as a threat and they try to close it.
Yeah.
Because it's not only just for your criminal convictions, but it's also used to overcome the conditions of your confinement and many other things. So when you're attacking conditions of your confinement, that's when you're going after the people who are running the DOC, some of the people that work at that facility. So they see the law library as a threat. It's really like the only thing that balances out or evens the odds in the system, besides physical confrontation, which is constant. But that is a way that you can actually get your point across legally, that the so-called powers that be can understand your issue in an intelligent tone. So make sure that when you go into the system, or if you ever go into it or visit, or you're helping out with it, make sure you're always checking on the law library, because that's how people are contesting what happened to them bringing up issues that should have been brought up, and challenging their convictions.
One thing I see about a lot of the facilities up here, they do a lot of stuff that deserve a lot of lawsuits. They're doing a lot of stuff that shouldn't be done. And it needs to be something done about it. Definitely. I recently went
Well,
through, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I I think it was just the internet connection. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it kind of went in and went out, so it's back. It's good.
Is this still recording?
Yes. Yes.
It's still recording, right?
Mhm.
All right. We're still recording. But yeah, recently I went through a little phase where well, with law enforcement, it was bad. Turned out that it was a lot of corruption going on. I had a weapon planted on me, and you know, it was a long story, but I was set free, but by the grace of God, but I seen a lot of stuff while I was in there. It was dudes coming in wheelchairs. They was just throwing them on the floor. Right now I'm currently fighting that case. And
Yeah, without a doubt. Like, I've had a lot of people that I know died in the system. Like, I made it out. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a struggle, and there's a bunch of craziness behind them walls. Like, people don't really understand. And I haven't really gone into that because
yeah,
I'm just going over laying certain foundations to tap back into that. But
right.
yeah, it's a conflict that cannot be told in words, as we say. So,
Absolutely not.
I could tell you, yeah, 1,000 stories, and um, and sometimes, not to get on certain things, but you have to balance it between what you do physically to survive in there
Right,
and what you do legally, and then
right,
what you do spiritually. So you have to there's a balance in that between all of those, and all of those things sometimes they work in harmony. Sometimes you can do only so much legally, but if you ain't doing nothing physically, then even your legal work could be disregarded. You know what I'm saying? Like, if there ain't no threat of somebody's hands getting put on somebody, then the legal situation goes only so far sometimes. So all of those things have to work together. You know, um, so that's why in the temple or whatever, we communicate with everybody. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody has a part to play.
Mm.
All of these things work in unison.
Well, me
So,
personally, I was
but
beat up by the
yeah,
you know,
you say that again?
I said I was beat up by the officers in the cemetery. They turned the cameras off. I just talked to the lawyer the other day, and I explained him the story, and he explained it back to me. And even he asked me why. He asked me, he said, "Yo, why did they turn their cameras off?" I said, "You're asking the wrong person." And I had told him, I said, there's a reason why they turned their cameras off. I said they don't want you to know why they turned their cameras off, but I was actually knocked off conscience. You know, it's crazy. That's actually one of the worst memories I ever had, because I remember it like it was yesterday, man. I ain't gonna lie. That was a scary sight, because I remember it like it was scary, but it's people out
Yeah,
there really going through that stuff. Like, I never want to go through that again, but that was something that I really witnessed, where people really go through with law enforcement. Like, when I really see people on the news going through stuff, when they say, "Oh, black men died by the law enforcement," he got shot by a cop, when I seen that cop holding his gun, and I really seen, like, I seen it in his eyes, I said, "Yo, this cop really want to kill me." And I said, "Damn,
yeah,
like, I don't want to be another statistic, but it's crazy, you know, what people go through out there. But, you know, I'm glad that I'm here today, and I'm glad that I got a chance to see my family again. But I almost died that night, you know.
Yeah, and that's I'm glad you made it through that situation. That's a another testament of survival. But and we also we know kind of you got to think of it like we're always at war, just like Mobb Deep said there's a war going on outside, and I'm in the safe from it. You can run, but you can't hide forever. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta know that. You know what I'm saying? Like they tell you in the boxing ring, says protect yourself at all times. So this is not just to keep somebody on guard and at odds with the state or anything like that. Live your life and do good. Do what you're supposed to do. Treat others.
But to be summons, but to be summons for jaywalking, to be messed with for jaywalking, you know what I mean? To be messing with people for jaywalking, you know what I mean? That's not enough. You know what I mean? It's just not enough.
That's part of the war. So that's all part of the war. So you have to, once you study the art of war, the war is impersonal. You just got to know your position and know how to fight.
Right.
So once you take the emotion out of it, and then you start looking at it objectively,
right,
and not subjectively necessarily, because you are the subject of it, but you got to overcome that a little bit.
I did.
And then once you start understanding the strategies of war, legal war, physical war, whatever it is that you understand, you got to know how to engage. And you can't, no one, our problem is, like the prophet says, it says our people suffer from a lack of knowledge. Because when we feel all right, we're in the air conditioning, we're drinking nice, cool drinks and stuff like that, we don't remember the war. So that's when you're supposed to remember the war in the time of peace. And that's when we put our brain on vacation in the time of peace, but we forget about the war. Like everybody that gets out of prison, they forget about prison until they get locked back up, and then they remember they forgot those sights and those smells and what they was going through. That's it's like you walk outside, you forget it. But you got to keep your mind there. You know what I'm saying? You gotta
know what you're talking about. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Gotta keep it with
as
you.
long as you're thinking like that, you'll never get taken off guard, and you would expect it. You know what I'm saying? Like every day you should expect the worst. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It says, like at a time of peace, it says when there's a least appearance of danger, or when there's a least appearance of evil, suspect the greatest danger. So if you could understand what that means, then you can understand a lot.
Right.
Where there is the least appearance of evil, suspect the greatest danger. So if you understand that, yeah. So that's that's in the circle 7. But if you understand that, then you understand what's going on. So I'm not saying don't enjoy your life. I'm not saying none of that. But I'm saying that don't get caught up in the illusion. You know what I'm saying? Like always know that there's something else going on. It's like that's why they hide the prisons back there behind places that people can't find them anyway, because it's out of sight, out of mind. So most people don't even think about it until you're in there. Most people just think, oh, I'll never be in there. I'll never make those type of mistakes, or I'll never do that. I don't drink. Man, whatever, man. Anytime you want, anybody can press any law against you at any time.
Yes.
So if you're not understanding that, and if you don't understand that you might be the target of that for whatever reasons, a multitude of reasons, and 100% or another major reason is our ignorance of the law. So then in our ignorance of what law enforcement is supposed to do, is not supposed to do, how we're supposed to react in the face of law enforcement, so-called, then, you setting up a bad situation. Yeah. So if we don't overcome those types of pockets of ignorance, sometimes we can be so focused on achieving. And I don't care if you working in a corporation or whatever, you just so focused on, getting a promotion and doing the best and helping other people, but you're not thinking about the other part, that could take you out at any time.
Yes, it can.
You got to think about everything. That's why people prepare for, they prepare for doomsday. They prepare for drought. They prepare for famine. They prepare. You know what I'm saying? They got a first aid kit in the car. They got a gun. They got blanket in there in case the car break down and it snows. You gotta be prepared. You know what I'm saying? That's what they teach the Boy Scouts. They say be prepared. That was the policy. Be prepared for what? For whatever. You know what I'm saying? So if you prepare like that, going in knowing, you don't so-called panic. So sometimes when people, a lot of stuff that I see is people panic. You know what I'm saying? It's like overwhelming emotion at a situation when you come into contact with these people that's walking around with badges and authority and stuff like that. And you might overly present your issue, you might overly present your objection. Sometimes when you should be, when you should be silent, people don't be silent. When they shouldn't move, they don't sit still. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes the movements that you make it's like moving around in quicksand. The more you move, the quicker you sink. So sometimes it's like overcoming what you naturally want to do and understanding what's going on and what's going to take place next. So, that's a lot of distance.
Right.
And to overcome what you feel emotionally in the situation, you want to object. Somebody puts their hands on you, you want to fling them off. But you gotta know what the trained reaction response is gonna be. When you do that, they're gonna do this. And if you know those things, you know what I'm saying? That's what they teach in all martial arts classes and stuff. Okay, if he hits you like this is what you do. And if he does this is what you do. And if he does this is what you do. But if you're not knowing the other side and all you know is what you think, then you're not prepared.
Exactly.
So you don't even know how to disarm or what they call it, de-escalate a rabid officer. You know what I'm saying? A rabid officer is one that had rabies. So you don't understand how to de-escalate that situation. And you escalating and he escalating. So it's gonna be a bad situation. So, all of that is like mentally overcoming the gaps in the knowledge. We have to overcome that. We can't walk around not knowing. Like that's saying that just because you know all this stuff is gonna work your way, but we can't walk around not knowing.
You can't.
Because people take advantage of people that don't know.
They will.
Straight up.
They will.
That's what they do. People take advantage of people that don't know, and that don't have immunity. And
you will empower
a person.
You will empower something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to know that this nation deals with people who have power and people who have no power. People who have immunity and people who have no immunity. And if you don't understand immunity, the concept of immunity, which hopefully we will get to, then you don't understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Boy, I don't even know where to begin, but I know that we're going to take a break. And I think we're going to come back and still talk about the habeas corpus, but we're also going to go into the void judgment positions. I want you to highlight that. So we're going to take a break. And you and DK will come back and we're going to have more dialogue. So I hope everybody's geared for this, because this is a segment that you don't want to miss.